A big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video.
Morning everybody, fantastic to see you all again. So I have had lots and lots of questions about last week's video, and in particular the focus and exposure stacking that I did. I did both of them in one image, and focus stacking and HDR exposure blending is something that I get asked time and time again. So I thought I'd just do a quick video. It's really easy. There's nothing too much to worry about when doing it, but people get a little bit worried about it. So first of all, I want to talk about in the field. So when you're actually taking the photo, the most important thing is, first of all, frame your shot. So you've got your shot framed like I did here in this image. And usually if I've got any foreground in the scene, then just to be safe, I focus stack. And then the other thing I need to think about is, what's the histogram looking like? Do I need to take a couple of exposures? And again, I usually do that for every shot as well. So the simple way is I usually take two exposures. I expose for the sky and I expose for the foreground. Sometimes I take three. I always do that manually. You can set up the exposure bracketing on your camera, but I find it easier just to do it all manually. And then you've just got to decide where to focus on the image. Again, most of the time I just focus on the foreground and then the distance, and that's usually enough. There's usually crossover with the focus on those two images, but just to be safe, in most images I'll also focus somewhere in the midground as well. The key thing when you're doing this is that when you take your different exposures, they need to be taken at the same spot you focused on. So if you focused on the distance, you need to take three exposures at that distance, and then you need to take the same three exposures focused on the foreground. It doesn't matter how you do that. I do it just by knowing where I've focused, and I set the exposure and I focus at top, middle and bottom, and then I change the exposure, focus top, middle and bottom. As long as you focus in the same spot, that's fine. And then you come back into Lightroom with those images, and just for simplicity, I'm just going to do one focused at the top and bottom, so on the foreground and the distance, and exposed for the sky and exposed for the foreground as well. So let's jump into Lightroom. You can see I've got four images here. I've got one that's exposed for the foreground. I probably should have exposed it a slightly bit lighter than this. I probably didn't expose it quite light enough, but you learn by your mistakes. And then this one's exposed for the sky. Just on this, sometimes people think that you can pull back your highlights, and they'll look at an image like this and then they'll think, okay, I bet a camera can pull back the highlights. And you reduce the exposure and you think, oh, I can see the sky now, and it looks okay. The problem is that if you look at that sky, it's just weird colours, whereas if you look at the actual sky that I took exposed for the sky, look at the one that's focused on the sky, then you can pull back and just release so much more colour in that sky than that one that was slightly overexposed. The same applies for the shadows. You're going to get some noise in the shadows, and that's why you exposure bracket. Okay, so the order we're going to do things is we're going to blend two exposures, and then we're going to edit the photo, and then we're going to take that edit and put it on the blend of the other two exposures that are focused on the foreground, and then we're going to blend it all together. Sounds complicated? It's actually really simple. So this one here is focused on the mountain in the background. You can see it's pin sharp, and so is this one. So just check it's focused on the mountain in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get those two, and I'm going to go photo merge, HDR, and then that will merge those two photos. You just want to make sure it says auto align. Don't click auto settings because we want to edit the photo and not use its edit. So we're just going to merge that. Okay, so now we've got this merged image here. We've now got, we can pull back the highlights and we can reveal all that really nice detail now, but we haven't got any noise in the shadows, and we can pull out more detail in the shadows. So we've just got more dynamic range in that shot, basically. But it's still, because I merged just the one focused on the distance, it's still not in focus on the foreground here. So we're going to sort that later, but first we're just going to edit this photo. Okay, I've edited this image now. Basically what I've done is I've applied a few masks. I've just sort of edited the sky. I've edited this purple area here, all the purple, and just pulled out some of that purple. and I've also just applied a mask to the foreground here and improved that, and I've added quite a lot of saturation to the purple as well in the HDR tab. So if I just go down to this, you can see I've increased the saturation of the purple quite significantly. So I think that's about right. I might just want to just change the hue of the blue a little bit. So I could mess about with a long time with the edit of that, but once I've got an edit of that image, I like to edit it here before I do the focus stacking edit. I might tweak it after I've done the focus stack. I then copy that, so I just do Shift Command C and then make sure everything's ticked on here and click copy. And then I'm going to apply those settings in a minute to the HDR of the one that's focused on the foreground. So I'm just going to merge those two images first. So I'm going to merge those two. Okay, so that's the other two, the one focused on the foreground merged. I'm just going to paste the settings onto that. So now I've got those pasted. I mean, looking at the edit now, I probably need to change it. I think it's probably just a little bit too bright in the foreground, but you can mess around forever on an edit, and it's not something that you can do really quickly. So I've now got these two images, one that's focused on the background, one that's focused on the foreground. I just need to right click and then go edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. There's lots of different ways of opening things in Photoshop. I just want to show you a simple way of doing it. Okay, so we've got these two layers in Photoshop. There's two ways you can do it. You can just apply a mask onto the top one and then just blend them together with the mask. Or the easiest way, and I want to do it really easy in this tutorial, is you can just go to Edit, Auto Blend Layers. And with 2 layers, this does a good job. With 3 layers, it does a really good job, and it's much easier if you've got 3 focus stacks where you focus on the middle, the bottom and the top to do it the auto way. And you can see it's done a pretty good job there. There's a few dots, but to be honest, you won't notice those. And if you wanted to, you could just fine tune that now. And you can just go and have a look at it and see what it's like, but I think that's a pretty good job. You can see that all the stuff at the bottom is absolutely pin sharp, and then going up, it's pretty good. Sharp, 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 all the way to the very top, which is sharp. So that's a very sharp image that's got a great dynamic range. So all we need to do now is close that, save it. So back in Lightroom now, that's saved, and you can see we've got this TIFF image, and yeah, it's super amazing. It's super sharp all the way through, and it just looks fantastic. If you want to, you can tweak the edit there now. You might want to just apply a few tweaks to it. That's fine. If you're going to do major changes to it, I go back to this one and do the changes on that DNG and then go back through the process. Okay, so what we need to do now is print it and just have a quick look at it. So I'm just going to go and print that. So I just go to print, page setup. I'm going to go and just do an A2 print of it. And we'll print it on the bright white photo speed paper, which I absolutely love. And print. Oh, there's something so excited about seeing a print come off a printer. But before I go on to the print, and I'll show you the print and we'll talk about it, I just wanted to say something about Squarespace, who are sponsoring this week's video. I know I always talk about Squarespace, but this is just a little bit different because I wanted to just mention just how important to me a website's been in the growth of everything that I've done, really. Before I even set up as a professional photographer, and when I did set up as a professional photographer, then the ability to sell my prints was so important to me, and Squarespace were just the obvious choice. They made it so easy to do, adding my images, uploading my prints, setting up a store. I didn't have to worry about any of the payment side of it. It was all taken care of. And now I sell thousands of books and calendars through Squarespace, and it's such a great company to sponsor me because I'm just so passionate about them. They've just really made it easy for me. So if you're looking for a company to do a blog with, share your images with, or you may be ready to start selling some prints or do some one-to-one workshops, then check out Squarespace, and you can get a free trial at squarespace.com. And if you go to /Nigel or use offer code Nigel, you can get 10% off. Right, let's have a look at this print. So it's turned out pretty well. When I print something, usually I get it right first time because I've calibrated my screen to my printer. And we can probably actually just see, wonder if it looks, how it looks on here. Yeah, it looks pretty good, doesn't it? I mean, obviously there's depending on the light and the colour of the light, this is going to look a bit different, but I think it's pretty good there. And the foreground is super pin sharp. You know, there's a nice transition. I can't see where I've stitched it at all. And the background mountings are pin sharp as well. Now, I may have been able to take this at like f13, f15, 16, but you start to get diffraction and you get a little bit of a softer image. So I prefer to blend together 2 f9 shots or 3 f9 shots. I'm really happy with this. I think it's turned out so well. I hope that's helped you. I hope that you can go now do those exposure and focus stacks. I do them on almost all my images when I've got foreground in the scene. Okay, thanks ever so much for watching. Until next Sunday, bye.